Good morning. This is Michael Conley, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent of Finance and Operations. And today I'm going to do a brief presentation on the school budget revenue offsets. I think there's often many times when we look at school finance and school budgeting, a good opportunity to take some time and talk about what else goes into funding a school and municipal budget, other than just the local appropriation from the general fund. So usually there's a lot more in terms of funding that goes into providing the educational experience for the students, including grants, revolving funds, donation funds, etc. And I'm hoping after today's presentation, everyone will have a little bit of a better understanding of what goes into a school budget. So here's a little pie chart that a bar graph that shows what the total kind of all funds are. And on the left-hand side, you certainly have what is the general fund budget. So this is the fund that's supported by the local appropriation at the annual town meeting through the tax levy. The revenue that's sort of generating the local appropriation is certainly the property taxes, the local receipts, and different permits and licensing and fees, as well as local and state aid and the Chapter 70 educational state aid formula, and as well as unrestricted local government aid. So those are the majority of the revenue sources that help support what the town votes annually at the town meeting, and that's the general fund budget. And then there's a lot more that goes into the school budget, and that's the known as special revenue funds, and that's what we're going to focus on today. And that involves federal grants, state grants, revolving funds for different programs that we may charge user fees or tuitions for, as well as other special revenue funds, mainly gifts and donations. So all these things work together, and those are the annual amounts that are proposed for fiscal year 24. As you can see, the majority is certainly the general fund, but then there's a good amount, more than $3.5 million that are being funded through special revenue funds. Here's a quick little pie chart that just kind of shows the breakdown of this from a percentage basis. So certainly the municipal contribution, the amount supported within the levy, the property taxes, is the largest piece of the pie in a school budget at 73.6% in North Reading. State aid, Chapter 70, unrestricted local government aid, comes in at about 19.4%. The revolving and the special funds, grants, gifts, donations, revolving accounts, is at about 5%. Our federal grants, which I'll go over in a moment what some of those are, is 1.7%. We also receive state grants at about 0.2%, and then there's other local sources, licensing, permits, fees, make out less than 1% of the pie. Here's the school's history of our revolving and grant, both federal and state budgetary offsets for the last 9 or 10 years. And you can see these numbers have stayed about the same, about $2.5 million. It has not changed significantly in the last number of years, because we've had some more stimulus and COVID-19 relief grants in recent years, starting in about fiscal year 21-22. The amounts increased somewhat since fiscal 21, from about 3.2 million to close to 3.5 million. But we haven't really increased a lot of our user fees, and we've worked hard not to do that. So there is some limits of our ability to bring in this type of revenue. But as you can see, we've been a good amount of revenue, over $3 million since fiscal year 20. So what are sort of our makeup of some of our annual federal and state grants? And these are sort of the the ones that we've relied on an annual basis. The majority of these are entitlement grants that the district is eligible for. The allocation amount has either been the same or it's set annually by specific student demographic data and enrollment data drive the amount the districts receive each year. The Circuit Breaker program is a state program that's designed to assist districts with providing a level of reimbursement, generally 75% for special education tuition costs that are above a specific threshold amount, which has typically been 4 times the state average of the foundation budget, approximately around $47,000. The Student Opportunities Act, which has been in place now, would be the 3rd year in fiscal 24, is looking to add special education transportation costs to this formula. And this is being phased in over a 4 to 5 year process. But generally, our early childhood federal grant supports preschool paraprofessional. We receive a teacher quality grant, which helps support teacher mentor program and professional development for teachers. We receive a Title I entitlement grant, which for our Title I eligible schools, the middle school, the Hood, and Little elementary schools, help support some tutoring for eligible students. Our IDEA grant helps support some special education costs for paraprofessionals, transportation, and other medical therapeutic contractual services on an annual basis. That's the largest federal grant of about $550,000. We have received a digital literacy technology grant, which helps support some technology professional development opportunities and substitute costs for our teachers to go receive technology professional development outside the district. And then I mentioned earlier the Circuit Breaker program, and this amount does vary based on our costs. It's a reimbursement program, but we've been between 1.2 and 1.4 million for a number of years. And all in all, these kind of annual allotments total a little bit more than $2 million. If you look at sort of what's been going on since the pandemic and COVID-19, you can really kind of see, these two charts on these next 2 slides break down all the additional funding that we've received to support really new costs, new expenses, all related to the COVID-19 virus and the pandemic. And most of these are now running out, which I'll get to in a moment, but we have a school reopening grant of a little more than $500,000, certainly an influx of computers, remote learning, software, sanitation and HVAC upgrades. We've helped bring on, additional nursing staff and services, Chromebooks, digital devices, hotspots, protective PPE equipment and technology, cleaning services, additional food service, curbside pickup during the pandemic, remote learning support during the hybrid learning year, some additional school nutrition equipment, additional services for touchpoint cleaning during the pandemic, some learning loss initiatives for summer acceleration programs, additional therapeutic services and assistive technology expenses, additional tutoring and nursing. So as you can see, we've received a little over $2 million over the last number of years to help support all expenses that can all be characterized and related to the COVID-19 pandemic, for different things related to technology, learning loss, tutoring, social emotional support and services, protective equipment, HVAC upgrades, everything that has been related to the pandemic. We did receive additional federal and state funding for, to the tune of a little over $2 million, going back to about fiscal year 20 and 21. So a lot of funding that was there. These slides say prior year because they're no longer available. Currently, the only remaining COVID-19 relief fund that we have available is what's known as the Emergency schools services, the SR3 grant. That's a grant of a little over $451,000 for North Reading. The deadline is September 30th, 2024. So this is a grant that we have available this year and next fiscal year. And we have used this grant for the same type of services. It's all staffing, and it's school adjustment counselors, academic intervention tutors, some digital technicians to support our one-to-one environment, and a floater school nurse. So we have made a decision to spend half this allotment, $225,000 or so this current fiscal year on those services. And then the remaining amount, the $225,000, is also budgeted to be spent next fiscal year and is a direct offset in our fiscal 24 budget. So lots of funding available here, as you can see. That's now all coming to an end in the very near future. So that could definitely put additional strain on budgeting for the local budgets as we move forward. So we talked a lot about grants, our annual state and federal grants. We just reviewed a lot of the pandemic COVID-19 relief grants that have been available since fiscal 20 and 21, mainly fiscal 21. And now we're going to look at the revolving special revenue accounts and what's the funding source of those and what the offset amounts has been. So unfortunately, in North Reading, we have had to assess user fees and tuition-based costs for full-day kindergarten and preschool. They are a direct offset to our expenses for the revenue that brings in. So here's a breakdown of the main revolving accounts: athletics, user fees and gate receipts, approximately $300,000 a year, help support the costs of transportation, supplies, ice rental, all these types of things support the cost of our athletic program. For the user fee and the gate receipts that are assessed in our athletic program, we do have an extracurricular fee to help support the cost of student club advisor stipends, mainly at the middle school and the high school. We have a performing arts user fee, which helps support our performing arts program for theater and musical productions, both stipends and expenses. We have a transportation fee, which is a direct offset of our regular transportation contract, our 12 big yellow buses that run each day. Facility rental, when outside companies come in or programs come in and use our space, we do charge a rental fee, and that rental fee directly supports and offsets our buildings and grounds budget, and it supports the maintenance services for the upkeep of repairs and supplies for those areas that are being rented, mainly gyms, libraries, some classrooms, performing arts center, etc. Then we have our tuition-based programs, full-day kindergarten and preschool. The tuition for these programs is a direct offset for our direct costs, mainly the kindergarten teachers and paraprofessionals and preschool teachers and paras working in those programs with those students. And then we have our food service, our breakfast and lunch program, lunch sales, and what's really been the federal and state USDA reimbursement and state supplemental reimbursement, because we've had the universal free lunch since the beginning of the pandemic, beginning in fiscal 21, and that supports the cost of our entire program for the food service worker salaries, food costs, and supplies, and that all of these total a little more than $2.2 million, as you can see. So this chart kind of shows you what the current user fee is, what the direct costs budgeted for next fiscal year is set at, and then it also shows you what the percentage of that user fee contribution. So our bus transportation contract amount, a little over $850,000 for next year to run the 12 buses and midday kindergarten runs. With our $400 per pass and $650 family cap, we bring annually about $250,000. So that supports about 30% of the direct costs for that program. Athletics, with our user fees and set and some gate receipts, the contribution's about $310,000. But the actual cost of salaries, coaches, and all of the expenses needed to run the athletic program is $803,000 budgeted for fiscal 24. So that's about a 38% cost of the revenue contribution. Extracurricular activities at middle school and the high school, we bring in about $60,000. Stipends for those programs are close to 130, so we're about 46%, and that's currently set at $200 for the middle school and high school. Performing arts, we've restructured that user fee over the past couple of years, and we bring in about a little over $25,000. The actual direct cost of those stipends is close to $60,000, so we're at about 43% of those costs. The kindergarten program, we've been working on reducing the tuition, and we have that down to $3,000. The fiscal 24 budget has a proposal that would reduce that even further down to $1,500. We would like to have free full-day kindergarten by fiscal year 25. That's in our strategic plan. But the cost of what we're bringing in with the proposed $1,500 user fee would cover about 23% of the direct cost of the salaries in that program. Right now we're at $450,000, so a little bit more than that at the $3,000 proposal. And then preschool, you can see the full day and half day program, we bring in annually about $140,000, and that covers about 40%. So all in all, we're looking at a little over $1 million of these programs covering less than 35% of the direct cost of those programs. So here's the proposal for fiscal 24 when you look at general fund and then what's involved in grants and revolving accounts. Our proposal for fiscal 24 is $37,768,204, which is a little bit more than a $2 million increase. We would love, the grants and revolving accounts are a little bit less than that, at a little bit less than $3.5 million for next year. That increase of $57,000 can mainly be contributed to the fact that we are expecting our circuit breaker program to be higher next year based on our costs this year. So all in all, we're looking at $41,265,517 with the local budget, the general fund supporting about $37.7 million of that. That doesn't say the full story, because I mentioned we also have school committee accepted donations that we receive from our PTO, as well as our PTOs who do various in-kind budgets to support enrichment programs and field trips and teacher appreciation days. So all in all, that's an additional annual average of about $325,000. That also is a part of the equation that makes the North Reading educational experience is what it is today. So hopefully that kind of gave you a snapshot of what the revenue offsets are and the budget subsidies as part of our fiscal 24 budget. As I mentioned earlier, we are really just getting started in our budget process. And as we move forward, here are some key dates that you can be aware of. That's actually, so Friday, March 24th, 2023, actually, we'll have a budget webinar. Monday will be the public hearing on April 10th. School committee is set to vote on April 24th. And then Monday, June 5th, will be the annual town meeting where we'll look for support of our school budget. So that concludes my presentation. I hope that you found this helpful, and I hope you continue to tune in. Thank you.